Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Power Up Summit for 2025. First day of our 3-day extravaganza of Power Up. So our speakers for today, that on the call, we have the amazing Kieran Speight from ElectraNet. We've also got Cassandra Ellis, who is currently working at SA Power Network. She's also just wrapping up her degree. So they'll be speaking today. For day 2 and day 3, we've got 2 other amazing speakers lined up. We've got Ryan Turner, who's one of the API board members. He works at Oricon. And we've also got David Pointing, who I mentioned before. So he is the Australian Power Institute CEO, and he'll be having a yarn with everyone tomorrow. So I'll hand over to our speakers. So as I said, we've got the amazing Kieran Speight. He's from ElectraNet. Kieran, I'll just let you introduce yourself a bit more in depth, if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Cam. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm Kieran Speight. I'm a senior substation engineer at ElectraNet. And for those of you that don't know, ElectraNet is the South Australian transmission network service provider. I've been in the power industry now for sort of approximately 7 years, working in consultancy-based roles and on the client side with ElectraNet. And yep, very much happy to be a part of today and support everyone on their journeys.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kieran. And moving on to the wonderful Cassandra Ellis. Would you like to introduce yourself, Cass?
Thanks, Cam. So yeah, as Cam mentioned, I'm Cassandra Ellis. I'm currently working for SA Power Networks. So we're the distributor network service provider, so working in South Australia. I've been in the industry 5 years, so I started in customer service in the power sector before starting my degree, and I'm wrapping it up as we speak, so I've got 12 months, so just starting honours. And the reason I suppose I'm here today is I was lucky enough with the API scholarship that I went across to ElectraNet for the 3 months over summer just gone, working with Kieran in that environment. So keen to sort of share some of the, I suppose, key takeaways I had and how you can maximise any scholarships or placements moving forwards.
Amazing. So I'm going to hand over to our speakers now so they can start their presentation. So just so everyone's aware, as Cass has just mentioned, Cass and Kieran were completing the summer placement together last year at ElectraNet. So we're going to have them today share a little bit about their experience in the summer placement last year and get, and also have them share their experience both from the mentor side and the mentee side as well. And we'll get their best tips and tricks on how students coming into the summer internship can absolutely ace it and get the most from it. So handing over to Kieran, you are up first.
Thank you, Cam. So as you can see, it's a mentor's message for students starting their summer placement. I'll just note, this is applicable to summer placement, but it's also applicable to anyone entering the workforce. And a lot of these, messaging has come from my own personal learnings as I've developed from graduate to engineer through to senior as well. So I'll try and keep it high level, but this is sort of some of my key takeaways as a mentor that I'd like to pass on. And the first being that communication is key. Like at the end of the day, if we can't communicate effectively, everything else falls by the wayside. So there's always room for improvement with communication, and seeking feedback on how you communicate from your leaders and your mentors and your peers is really, really important as you work through your professional development into whatever engineering role, wherever you end up in your careers. Another really important one, I think, is seeking out opportunities. If people don't necessarily know what your interests are unless you tell them and help guide your leadership, or, you might have heard the expression manage up, but let it be known what it is that interests you as developing engineers, and your leadership and your mentors can help guide you on that journey. The next one, it's a little bit self-explanatory, but when you're on your placement, like if you've got the opportunity to try and spend as much time in the office as practical as what works for you. A lot of learnings, especially early in my career, came from that sort of osmosis effect of just being around and hearing the other conversations and what's going on a day-to-day. Like you'll get your own opportunities to develop and learn on the projects or works that you're assigned to, but you learn so many tips and tricks and pick things up from those around you if you can spend that time immersed in that office environment. Another big one is, from what I've found, is people tend to want to invest in someone who is willing to invest in themselves. And I guess what I mean by that is, I'm not saying that, the expectation is people go the extra mile outside of work, but showing that interest in what it is that you're doing and taking that time to do that little bit of research into a topic before bringing it up with someone, or showing that keenness or that eagerness to be involved in stuff. And it sort of relates, I guess, back to that seek out opportunities. But, it's how we present ourselves and what we show, what we're interested in. The next is utilising the learning journal, right? So as part of your summer placements, there's a learning journal that will be filled out by the individuals on that. And as much as, how do I word this? It's a really useful tool to sort of identify what you can, what you further want to look into, your reflections on what you've learned, what you want to do better, what you want to seek out. And if you're comfortable, share it with your mentor as you're filling it out as well. Like, seek feedback and guidance from them in the completion of that throughout the duration of it. Next one, this is one of my favourites, is there is no such thing as a silly question, especially in a technical related field such as engineering. Like, sometimes when you're working with people that have been in industry for a long time, there can be certain things that come across as assumed knowledge, where we as more experienced people in the industry might not understand that you don't get something the same way that we do. So please just, if there's anything you want to know, put your hand up, ask your mentors, ask your team, ask your peers. We're all here to help you on your journeys. Next, you get out what you put in. At the end of the day, it's as simple as that. Like, you need to be able to drive your own development. Like, we're all here, we're all professionals. It's really important that you'll get out what you put in. And the last is have fun. Like, you're at the start of your professional careers. You've got a big, long, hopefully fun road ahead of you. Like, take a moment to smell the roses and appreciate what it is that you're doing. And I think that's all from me with respect to the messaging. So I'll pass over to Cass.
Thanks, Kieran. So I thought I would share a little bit about my experience going into summer placement and sort of what I did while I was there. So as I mentioned before, I have been in the industry. So I had been in an undergraduate engineer role for a couple of years prior to starting the placement at ElectraNet, but I was working in a planning field, in a planning area on low voltage, so the 230 volt or 400 volt network. So moving to transmission into substations was a completely different area. It had a lot of skills that I hadn't sort of touched on before. So it was very daunting, even though I had been in the industry. So I just wanted to say, like, it is okay to feel daunted going into a placement, even if you've done a placement elsewhere. There is so much to learn in the power sector that they are very different depending on where you go. So as part of that as well, I had to learn a bunch of new skills, both technically and sort of stakeholder management, because it was a very different space, once again, to what I was in. And that does require a bit of effort. And as Kieran mentioned, that communication, especially between us, to sort of identify what I was comfortable with or what maybe I needed a bit more support with in the new environment. So the way it worked out for me is when I went there, I was given 2 tasks to sort of work on in parallel. One was a planning task that I was able to use my existing skill set for, and which I did feel sort of comfortable undertaking that process. The other task I was given was a very technical task and very detail orientated, which was something I hadn't touched before. So it involved reading a lot of technical standards, technical brochures, really getting down into the nitty gritty. That was definitely a task that I found a little bit more overwhelming to start with. It was a very big, open-ended task that I sort of felt a little bit lost as to where to start with a bunch of new terminology I hadn't come across before. So that was one where I did put up my hand to say, hey, I'm really unsure about this. I've never done this sort of thing before, and made sure that I got that support that I needed. By the end of it, I picked up new skills. The skills I learned are helping me currently in my honours while I'm reading a bunch of technical documents for that. So it was something that I'm glad I sort of put my hand up to say I need a bit of extra support, because that really helped me learn the skills and cement them in. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the learning journal. As Kieran said, it is a really good idea and a really good way to sort of further your professional development while you're learning the technical skills in the placement as well. I think there's a lot in there, and there's a lot of different things it covers. So using it as well is just sort of like a landing platform, or the opposite of that. But if there's anything that you think is very beneficial to you, expand on it. Don't just be limited by that journal in and of itself. If you think there's things that you could be exploring more, speak to your mentor, speak to your team, and try and see what else you can learn while you're there. I think that's me for that one. I'll pass back to Kieran.
Thanks, Cass. Very well said. Moving into the mentor's advice on acing summer placement. So this is, I guess, a little bit more technical in terms of previously it was a bit more high level. I'll delve into this in a little bit more detail, and yeah, please put any questions in the chat, or as Cam mentioned before, and we can address them at the end. But one of the big things that sort of stands out to me in my experiences in industry is if you know you're going to what organisation you're going to, take that bit of time to research the place that you're going to. Like a lot of the websites, or a lot of the companies and their websites have a lot of information regarding, you know, what the intent of their organisation is, what their mission statement is, what they're trying to achieve, what their 5-year plan is, and try and align yourselves with a certain aspect of that, and that'll make your experience on placement to help guide you to understand what it is that you're doing and how you fall into that bigger picture. And it shows people in the organisations that you'll be joining that you are hopefully genuinely interested in the opportunity that you've got through the API program as well, that you've taken that bit of time to understand what it is and why it is that you're getting into. The next is around setting expectations with your mentor early about what you want to achieve from the organisation with respect to your placement. And that sort of leads on from that first point where, like Cass gave a great example before about like we're in the substation, like in my team, we're delivery focused, we deliver capital projects, but there was an opportunity for Cass to undertake sort of a planning style task, and that might not have been necessarily evident at first coming into a delivery focused environment where we're working on projects, but she was able to speak up and help outline some of what she was wanting to get from the program as well. So we were able to identify and tailor a task that was suited to meet some of the outcomes that she was seeking to achieve. And I can't sit here and say that everyone will get the opportunity that they're exactly looking for from their placement. It's very company dependent and what's available at that point in time. But taking that time to try and set those expectations with your mentor or the organisation that you're with, you know, if you don't ask, if you don't communicate, you won't get. So it's definitely worth taking that time to try and do that. Another one is, it's okay not to be a technical expert on day one. Like I know for myself personally, when I came out of university and into the energy industry, I had this expectation on myself that I would be able to hit the ground running and I would know everything. I'd studied everything at university, and it can be incredibly daunting when you join a professional organisation for the first time and you have a really, really steep learning curve. You have to learn not just all the specific technical requirements comparative to the organisation, but the hows and the whys they do what they do as well. Like as a mentor, as a leader, like, we don't expect you to come in and being fully capable of delivering on day one at 100% efficiency comparative to the rest of the team. Like, we completely understand that it is a learning journey for you, and we're here to try and support you with that learning. So yeah, don't beat yourselves up if you come in and sort of go, oh my God, I've got no idea what's happening in this space. Like, just put your hand up, speak to people, communicate, and we're all here to help guide you on that journey. Making the most out of your placement. 3 months may seem like an incredibly long time when you've just come out of your penultimate year, as in most people's cases, penultimate year of university, and heading into summer before going back and potentially completing your respective honours projects. But the time will fly. So make the most out of the opportunities that get offered to you and that you seek out in that time. Before you know it, you'll be coming towards the end of that placement, and you'll be looking back and going, where'd the past 3 months go? And look, I can't speak for all organisations here, but it's definitely something like, and from experience with other people I've been through university with as well, like, your summer placement potentially sets you up for the beginning of the rest of your life from a professional career perspective as well. I know a lot of people that have gone on to be fully employed by organisations that they have done their placement with. So try and seize those opportunities, try and show the best version of yourself. And leading into, I guess, my final point on that is network. I know it can be a bit of a cringy term, and through university there'll be networking events, through work there's networking events, but the power industry is not a massive industry, and a lot of the people that you meet now through university, through API, through programs like this will be the people that you work with if you stay in the power industry through the rest of your career. So take the time to meet those people, understand who they are, and you'll build professional relationships that will last the rest of your career. And I think that's it from my advice at this point in time. If anyone else has any questions, please pop them in the chat, but otherwise I'll pass back over to Cass.
Thanks, Kieran. Just want to, I suppose, touch on the last point you made about networking. It definitely is daunting to start with, but I also found when I stepped over to ElectraNet, people loved to hear from some of the new person. I had some really good conversations just in break rooms waiting for a coffee to be made just by saying hi. You can definitely get a lot just from starting really simple and really small. It doesn't have to be scary. I suppose I wanted to give 3 key pieces of advice that I feel help me succeed in placement, but also I use when I'm jumping into any new role, specifically while I'm still earlier in my career. So one, as I talked before, don't be shy to say you're finding a piece of work challenging and asking for something in your skill set. Sometimes if you're given a piece of work that it is challenging or difficult, it can sometimes feel very hard to sort of keep working through it, and sometimes just a bit of a reset can be really beneficial. So asking if there's maybe even just a really small task that might only take an hour but you're going to be able to accomplish really easily can just help reset the mind frame and sort of give you a bit more confidence in yourself again. I found that very useful. The second one may sound a bit silly, but communicate about communication. I truly think that communication is a skill like anything else, like algebra, electromagnetics, whatever you want. It's something you have to learn, practice, and then be taught / get feedback on. So something that I do regularly, especially while I'm still sort of building up my network and experience in the industry, is I will ask people, how would you go about sending this email to this type of person? Or how might you go about starting this sort of conversation if I'm a little unsure how to tackle it? And just sometimes getting that feedback on a couple of points to maybe start, or a proofread of an email with some changes, but then also really taking the time to understand, why did they make those changes to my initial email? Why have they suggested it in this specific way? Really helps just learn that communication a little bit better. And the third one I have learned is, when you identify a problem, identify possible solutions yourself. So you might come across a roadblock that you're really unsure how to solve, what the answer might be. Give it a go. try and find a solution or a couple of solutions that you think might be appropriate, and then approach your mentor or manager with those possible solutions, saying, hey, I have this problem. I'm thinking the answer could be A or B. What do you think? And in doing that, I have, I think, learned to solve my own problems and work from fundamentals up, which is a really key skill to be able to do. I've surprised myself more than once that I actually did have the right answer and was able to get it correct myself. And it also then saves time for the mentor in that you're able to still sanity check your answer and go, hey, I had this problem. I think the answer is A. They go, yep, perfect, spot on. And then you can continue with your work. But also, if you're not on the right track, they can give you feedback as to why you're not on the right track. It helps you learn your problem solving skills a bit better. What have you missed? Where have you gone wrong in that process? And sort of guide you on the right track, so that I think if you learn where your mistakes were and not just the answer was wrong, you can then make sure that the next time you do a similar process, you'll be able to take in that feedback and change the way you've done it. In saying that, I do know that sometimes the roadblocks can feel really big and you don't even know where to start. So even going, what is a potential solution to this? Is the solution maybe, do I need to talk to people? Do I need to research? And just try and identify what that possible pathway might be if you can't get to the answer. It just shows that ability to be thinking, your critical thinking and working through the problem. So they're probably my three biggest takeaways that I've sort of come across in my early career. I think we'll pass it back to Cam.
All right. You'd be glad to know that after multiple years of COVID and lockdowns and using MS Teams, I've actually remembered to come off mute before I start speaking. So that's always good. So we'll jump over to the Q&A portion of our presentation now. So if you haven't had a chance to join the Slido, please do. So any and all questions, and as we've said, there's no such thing as a silly question. And I very seriously do mean that. There is no such thing as a silly question. We'll start going through those questions in just a moment. But yes, please do join the Slido. Please do throw any and all questions you've got in there. To lead us off, I've got a great question here. What are some of the most common communication mistakes that you see interns make that you think we should be mindful of? I think it's both for Cass and Kieran, I think. Maybe more geared towards Kieran, I suppose. But yeah, is there anything that springs to mind there, guys, for that question there?
That is a great question.
Absolute banger of a question, yeah.
So I think, and this is just, I guess, personal reflection from my experience, when asking questions of people, a big thing to do is try and understand your audience in who you're speaking to. Where if you're speaking to, say, a manager comparative to like a principal or a lead engineer, sometimes people don't necessarily need to know all of the technical details or all of the background as to why you've come to them with the question in the first place. And that's really tricky because you learn these things as you work through and understand, the different idiosyncrasies of the people around you and the environment. But I guess to sort of simplify it, it would be try and understand your audience or who you're speaking to before and use that to tailor the question that you'll ask. And I might pass over to Cass to see if she has anything else to add to that.
To add to that, because that was the exact thing I was thinking, the level of context to give on questions. I personally have been caught sometimes where I don't get the answer I need because I haven't explained enough. But then I've also done the flip side where sometimes I've gone in with this whole story and all of this backstory that really didn't need to be given at the same time. So I think, as well as considering whether it's technical management, understanding, especially if you're doing project work, what involvement that person might have already had in the project to understand how much background and context needs to be given before you can ask the question. And like Kieran said, that really helps frame the question correctly for that individual.
Okay, lovely. With that question, and like think that was a great response for both of you. Is there any, I suppose, and this question sort of speaks to both the internship and both of your previous work experiences. Do you find that there's common mistakes that people who are earlier in their career make communication-wise when it comes to communicating with mentors or sort of people that they work with every day? Is there anything that springs to mind there?
Oh, yeah, look, I would probably lean away from using the terminology mistake in that there's always...
Yes, gotcha.
Yeah, there's always opportunities to be more, I guess, to improve our communication skills. But sometimes, like, because communication's incredibly broad, right? Like if, say, for example, you need to send an email to someone about a technical topic, and it can be quite specific. I would encourage you maybe to pick up the phone or to go speak to that person in person first, just to sort of brief them or give them a heads up as to what potentially what it's about, and then you can gauge from that verbal conversation how much context you need to put into that email to communicate the point that you're trying to make. And another one is probably like, say you're in team meetings, for example. I know personally I don't love it when I get a super technical question off the cuff. Having the capacity to plan or think about that, like at the end of the day, like we're in technical roles, generally before we respond to something, like it's really important to put thought into why it is we're saying what we're saying as well. So just, it's try not to, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, try not to put people on the spot with technical questions. Give them the opportunity to think about it or communicate with them first. I hope that answers your question there, Cam.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely perfect. Yeah, anything from you, Kat?
Yeah, something a bit different. I think, again, coming from personal experience, I know when I started, I had a tendency to maybe not own up if I felt like I was struggling with a task or ask for additional support. I think it's good to do that. It shows that you're thinking. It shows that you're trying to work through the problems, and people are there to help you, especially when you're young in your career. We've all been there. We've all started in a new industry where there's new acronyms, new terminology, new everything. So people want to help. So if you are a little unsure, like I said, think through your possible solutions, but speak up and ask for help.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. Moving on to our next question. This one is for Cass. So what's the most exciting project you've worked on during your summer placement?
During the summer placement, the technical task actually is the one I look back on the most fondly. I think when I started, like I said, it was really daunting and overwhelming, but I did actually enjoy a little bit learning the technical details and sort of learning those new skills. Like I said, they've come in super handy now. So I think if I were to sort of give general advice on that, is be open to the task you're given, give it a go. Because learning about something completely new, it was a topic from uni that I never thought I would use. And I was actually able to take the knowledge I had learned at uni from that topic and use it in the workplace, which I thought was really interesting. I really enjoyed that.
Okay, brilliant. Okie doke. So I've got one more question here, and this is for Kieran. And it's a bit of an interesting one, actually. So Kieran, in transmission, in addition to company research, are there some standards like the NER so I can start looking early? And any other resources along those lines there, Kieran?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. So, I guess sort of there's a couple of different ways to look at that. We've got the NER, we've got AEMO that sort of set some policies and guidelines more around like operational requirements of the NEM, and then you've got the WEM over in Western Australia as well that sits under that. But depending on which state you're based in, you'll potentially have different acts and regulations. So, for example, in SA, where I'm based, we have the Electricity Act, and then we have the electricity regulations. Those regulations call up AS 2067, which is the substation standard for voltages exceeding 1,000 volts, and call up AS 3000, which is an Australian standard for electrical installation and wiring rules. It also calls up AS 7000 for transmission lines. So it's like I sit in a design and construction space. Like I'm not really involved in like an operational aspect, but we have like the Australian standards that govern us, and then from them we have derived our own internal requirements, because I guess not every one of my favourite expressions, just to sort of segue a little bit, is Australian standards are a floor, not a ceiling. So they set the bare minimum that you must do to be compliant from a national perspective, but that doesn't mean that that's as far as you should go. From an engineering perspective, it's always risk-based as so far as is reasonably practical. So if you can exceed the minimum requirements to the standards in a cost-effective solution, that there's no reason why you shouldn't do that as well. A lot of TNSPs and DNSPs now have publicly available their functional requirements on their websites as well. So there's publicly available resources that you can look into from a research perspective in that. I'd recommend starting at the top, understanding what state you're in, what drives that, and going from there. When I was at uni, I don't know if it's still the case now as well, like we had access through to the Australian standards with our university login, so you can have a look in through there if that's something that's available to you as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kieran. And just one super quick follow-up question from me just regarding that there, Kieran. You mentioned some of AEMO stuff regarding the NEM and the WEM. Just out of curiosity, do you, to the best of your knowledge at least, are those publicly available records and stuff as well that can be accessed easily?
Yeah, as I understand it,
Okay.
the AEMO guidelines are publicly available online.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much there, Kieran. That was really helpful. So that's all the questions that we've got from the Slido. Now, just before we move on to the next part of the presentation, of the session, I should say, is there any questions from the audience that's not in the Slido currently? Does anyone want to jump off mute with any questions for Cass or Kieran? Anything at all?
I got one.
Yeah.
What, Kieran, what kind of stuff, like obviously you just talked about all like the standards and stuff that we should look at, but before going into like an internship program, what other, like, are there any softwares or what things can we do to like kind of get straight into the work instead of like, I'd imagine usually there's a couple-week period of just like learning basic stuff. What stuff can we do to just kind of get straight into it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from. It's really tricky, right? Because, as assuming the majority of the people on the call here are studying electrical engineering, it's an incredibly diverse and broad topic. So unless you know explicitly what organisation you're going to, what team you're joining, and you've had the opportunity to communicate with your mentor as to what the expected outcomes of your internship are going to be, until you spend that, get your foot in the door on that first day and sit down and unpack what it is that you're going to be looking at over the 3 months of your duration, I would be hesitant to sort of explicitly direct you anywhere under the event that it may or may not be relevant to what you do. So Some examples though that I will give is for us, we would use PowerCAD, which is a low voltage design software for AC supplies. We have people in our organisation that use PSSE, which is Power System Modelling software. We have people in our organisation that use CDEGS, which is a software that can be utilised for earthing design. Then there's PSCAD, which is used for transmission line design. It's really quite tricky. I guess I'd just like to reiterate the point that, you know, there's no expectation that you are able to hit the ground running on day one. Like for the interns that we've had through our organisation, like a lot of the intent of the placement is it's as much about the journey as it is as the destination, in that there might be a package of works that involves you producing, say, arbitrarily an earth grid design for a substation. But the intent of that is you get the opportunity to learn and understand how to use the software throughout that 3 months with the goal of producing that design at the end. So like it's all built in around, we don't expect you to be able to deliver, project deliverables on day one or day two. We want to help you learn those skills that you can carry on through outside of your internship. I know it sort of doesn't directly answer your question, but I hope that helps, Daniel.
If I may, I might add something to this as well, because completely agree with everything Kieran's saying. I think there's so much diversity. You could start looking at something and it not really be technically relevant to your role. And happy for Kieran to jump in if he disagrees here. But if you do really want to start having a look and getting your head around it, you could look at the power system holistically, especially if you haven't had any placements before. So reading through the company's websites, maybe both the distributor and the transmission operator in the state, to understand maybe what some of the challenges are. You'll start to then get a bit of exposure to some of the acronyms that are used in the industry and some of sort of that terminology, just to start understanding, I suppose, more big picture, holistic view of the company, the network, the environment that's working. And then when you're on the job, they will absolutely support you with any technical details you need when you're there.
Yeah, very well said, Cass.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, that was wonderful, guys. Really helpful there. Any more questions? Anything else? Ooh, I think Anna, did you have a question? Sorry, I just saw your hand moving around. I thought you were making yourself off mute. Take it away.
Yeah, just a quick one for Cassandra, just on the topic that you were saying before about looking for support when you need it. I know it's broad and it might be hard to give the specifics, but I'm really curious, especially during like the major technical project you were doing. How often did you feel like you were seeking that additional support? Like, were you checking in weekly, daily, hourly?
Short answer is all of the above. So it did change. So I know when I first started, I might be checking in sort of a couple of times a day. Or what I was doing, for instance, if I had a really big document, I would try and read through and highlight the little bits that I was a bit unsure of. So then I could get 30 minutes of Kieran's time sort of in a block and go, hey, here's my questions 1, 2, 3, 4, and sort of give them all together. That way it was less disruptive to his day, but I was still able to get all the support that I needed. And then as I went on, that touch base got a little bit more spread out. So I got to daily, then it got to every few days. It really depends, I suppose, how you're going with the task, but absolutely to start with, it was a couple of times a day. I would reach out and just ask a couple of questions, or like I said, it would be that sort of 30-minute block that I would try and bring a few questions to all at once.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Just to follow up on that really quickly, Cass, did you have like a coffee catch up or a weekly like meeting in person or online that you would have with Kieran, just to give you that chance to check in either face to face or face to face via laptop?
Yeah, for our specific, we both worked in the office pretty much 5 days a week. So although we didn't have anything necessarily set in weekly, we were touching base. And there were times though that if I knew that maybe I hadn't had to ask a lot of questions, I would set something up to make sure we were in constant contact. But in other roles, I have definitely set up something weekly or fortnightly with the manager or the mentor to make sure that communication was still ongoing and that line was always open.
Perfect. And was there anything you wanted to add there, Kieran?
No, I think Cass has summed it up perfectly. It's really sort of case by case, right? Like if you as a mentee are feeling that you're getting the appropriate level of support from your mentor, that you can handle at a daily, a couple of times a week ad hoc basis. But if you don't feel that you're getting the support that you're looking for in that, then back to, I guess, some of that initial terminology about managing up, like schedule something in, make it weekly, formalize it, and then you can come in there, as Cass said, with, all right, these are my points, this is what I'd like some clarity on and all of that, and use that opportunity as well to sort of communicate around how much support you think you need as well. So sometimes you will have to drive those conversations. Probably the only other thing, just segueing back to Daniel's question before as well, bit of a plug for AEMO. They actually have some really good free short courses online available through the website regarding the national electricity market and all of that. So I would recommend having a look, and if you're interested in understanding the network holistically, like there's some really good learning opportunities in there.
Okay, brilliant. That's some great questions there, everyone. Was there any other questions just before we move on? Is there anything else? As I say, no question too big or too small. Yeah. All right. As I always say, going once, going twice, and sold. Okay. Can I just get a quick round of applause for our speakers, please? Wonderful Kieran Speight and Cassandra Ellis. Thank you so much, guys. Really wonderful presentation today.